Oh, now you're starting recording now.
Well, I didn't hit record. I just hit start webinar.
Maybe it starts recording immediately.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday, July 14, 2021. Tonight, the vBrownBag specifically, the reason that you're here. Tonight, we've got Britton Johnson here with us talking about NSX-T update from 2.5 to 3x. So we did a series last year where Britton came in and enlightened us on some NSX-T goodness, and we actually have am I right in saying it's a four-part series coming up?
That's what's on the schedule.
It's a four-part series, updates to the NSX-T suite of things, and we get to learn what's new. So check out our schedule. Tonight looks like we're going to focus on bare metal, security, VLANs, Federation, and IDPS. Before we get started, I got a few housekeeping notes to go through. As always, you can get in on the conversation. Join us on Twitter with all of our various handles. Twitter hashtag vBrownBag. I will be watching that tonight. If anybody's got questions during the live show, you can ask it in the Q&A in your Zoom client, or hit us up on Twitter. We'll be watching and see if we can get that question or comment answered for you. Also, you probably already know because you've been there. You can visit vbrownbag.com/brownbags and check out some of our other shows around the world. We are not the only one. So, as always, not always, it's been a long time back in the saddle. I think it's been probably over a year for me, but it's nice to be back. I am Anthony Hook, Anthony R. Hook on Twitter on the bottom right. And more importantly, Britton Johnson, our guest, will be our tour guide. And that's all I got for an intro. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Cool. Again, yeah, it's a four-part series. So this is part one. It won't be next week, but the following week. So it'll be every other week. So this isn't going to be the only time we're going to talk about this. And of course, you can always find us on YouTube if you missed tonight's. And I guess if you're not watching it now and you're hearing this, you've probably already found it on YouTube. So that only makes sense. I'll stop talking now. And Britton, if you want to take over sharing.
Please, sir. Please continue.
Yeah, thank
to
you.
enlighten and entertain.
I will, with all things, will be elucidated or something.
All right. I am going to leave this opener job protection slide up for just a moment.
It's important. Read it, have your lawyer read it, and review.
Yeah. So, I mean, they didn't tell me to do this. It's just, since I did a VMworld presentation back in 2020, I have the slide now. So if I'm giving anything at a public forum like this, I'm going to go ahead and just put this on there so that folks, can, entertain themselves with some legalese. But in general, there really shouldn't be anything that's super, not new, because this is an update to existing technology that we're talking about here. So, but disclaimer away. All right. Welcome to this year's vBrownBag NSX-T series. The last one I did, the last four-part series I did last year was a lot of fun. Ken Nelbon and I had such a great time together. I decided to move to Indiana and be right next door neighbors with him almost. So Ken, shout out to Ken. So for that. So him and I had lunch, and we decided to plan out a series on updates from NSX-T from where we were last year, where we ended with last year's vBrownBag series. Last year, the entire series was built around version 2.4, 2.5, centered a lot around the VCP exam focus and the things that are questions and things like that were happening within the VCP exam based on 2.4, 2.5. So a lot of that series is still very much valid information. So I'm gonna. So Anthony, please implore the vBrownBag people to not delete that series off the YouTube channel because it's good information still. So
yeah, I mean, we were voting on it, but I guess we decided to keep it around this time.
yeah, because I mean, I think it's still valid. I still share it with customers, and there's still actually production systems like the Azure VMware solution, which is based on NSX-T 2.5. So there are still, even cloud services that are based on, a couple versions back. So I think it's still good to have that information out there publicly because it's still, in my view, a valid thing. But so this series that I'm doing this time around is going to build on a lot of what we talked about in that first series. So if you're looking for a lot of foundational core NSX-T content around that, I'm going to refer back to that a lot because there's just too much information for me to rehash all of that stuff all over again. And really not a lot of it has changed enough to just redo the whole thing from soup to nuts all over again. So that's sort of the foundational basis for what we're trying to do here. So who am I? My name is Britton Johnson. As Anthony said, I'm a staff solutions engineer in the virtual cloud networking space for healthcare. I'm in the north central part of the United States. I support healthcare providers and customers in all of the north central, so hospitals and things of that nature. I successfully re-upped my VCIX title, so I can keep my Twitter handle finally. So I'm glad I got that done earlier this year. So that is it's for your after certifications, keep after it, study hard, take the test as many times as you need to. But it can be done. Just keep on plowing through. In most cases, I like to say, like, I know I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I know how to find the answers, and I feel like I'm okay at communicating how these things work. And so, if I can buckle down and take these tests and get them, I'm sure most everybody can.
It's always easier too to keep those up and renew them than it is to let them lapse and have to recertify.
That too, yep. And then, so I'm a full-time SE, part-time podcaster. I have a couple of podcasts. I'm going to plug the HCX Majors podcast is the latest one I've been working on a lot lately. So this is centered around VMware's Hybrid Connect software, which is an additional add-on component to NSX. So we do a lot of conversational talks about what's happening with HCX and what it does for customers. So check that out if you're of the looking to get deeper information into things of that nature. So that's me. That's who I am. Here's the overall agenda for the series. It's NSX-T series 2021 for the vBrownBag group. So today is I'm going to try to encapsulate in this hour all of the stuff that has been new and changed from 2.5 to 3.x. And I'm not even going to get probably a quarter of it because there is so much. I will do my best to kind of hit the highlights and talk about what I think is important, but there's no way that I'm going to get everything. And so, I'll have more kind of resources and places you can get more information about that stuff. The next one in 2 weeks, I'm going to go through the NSX Advanced Threat Protection Suite. So this is sort of the next evolution and growth part of what NSX becomes as a suite of services. We'll talk about our acquisition of LastLine, which is a security threat and introspection company that VMware purchased kind of middle of last year, and what they're bringing to the table in terms of what making NSX a cohesive, holistic security suite for customers, and how they enhance our IDPS and network detection and response and all that kind of stuff. Lots of malware detection, malware malware and crypto locker stuff. I mean, all of that is really hot topics right now because everybody's getting breached every other day, it seems, healthcare systems included, and unfortunately. And so we are on the front lines, we feel like, of helping customers defend themselves against these bad threats that are out there. So we'll talk more in great detail about that. I'll cover some of that today, but very, very little. And then we'll get into the meat of what that really is in 2 weeks. August 11th, I'm going to go through a bit of a NSX design walkthrough. So this is unless you go and take the full NSX-T design course, which is a really good course. If you can take it online, you can get guys like Tim Burkhardt, one of our NSX wizards, to teach you some of these things from a VMware and professional course design perspective. So I'm going to take bits and pieces of that course and just sort of hit the highlights in an hour of what it takes to do an NSX-T design, because I've not seen anybody really talk about that publicly anywhere. But then there are certain kinds of ways that you need to approach an NSX-T design versus a general network design. So that one is going to be interesting. I'm still kind of putting that content together, so we'll see what that actually turns out to be. I'm moderately positive at this point that I think it's going to be good. We'll see. Nothing like confidence, right, Anthony? August 25th, then the last one in this series, we're going to talk about migration.
Hey, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yep.
Now that I've finally found my mute button, you said that exactly as I said it, but I thought I hit mute. Nothing like confidence, eh?
Exactly. So the last half of this year, within the networking and security business unit, which is the part of VMware that I work for, we sort of have a message to customers of this is the year of migrating from V to T. So so we're really kind of trying to hammer this in as loud as we can so that people know and ring the bell that if you're a NSX or vSphere customer, you need to get migrated to T, and you need to be starting that now. And so we'll walk through the migration options that VMware has, including HCX and some of the latest and greatest updates from HCX 4.1 that just came out. And so we'll spend that hour talking about what it takes to get from V to T. And I feel like that's a pretty good 4-hour series, and I think we'll have lots and lots and lots of good conversations to come out of that, and so that's the plan. Learning resources. So I always try to include this in any of these talks that I give, because the first thing everybody always asks is, how do I learn more? So again, we're going to refer people back to the series that I did last year. And again, imploring the vBrownBag team to leave that series out there for a while. And again, there's lots and lots of good information, good valid information still in that original series. Of course, there's NSX Tech Zone still. We still have, of course, the NSX Install Configure Manage class. And as I was cleaning up my office before tonight, I pulled out my book that I just picked up from fellow VMware staff person, Iwan Hugendorn. If you don't know who Iwan is, he's probably the only Iwan Hugendorn in the world. He is based out of the Netherlands. He is one of our professional services engineers, and he does really smart stuff. He's got like 7 CCIEs and a whole bunch of other certifications. Look up his YouTube channel as well. He did not ask me to plug this book. He just released 2 NSX books of his own accord, and they are excellently put together. He did an amazing job just kind of organizing and putting his thoughts on paper and publishing these books out all on his own. So if you want some, like if you're sick of staring at a screen and you want to learn something still about this, pick up Iwan's book. You won't regret that as an information thing just to have in your library and as a good go-to resource. Okay, let me take a sip and we'll get into this. All right. So if you watch the first series, which Anthony, I know you didn't, but I won't hold that against you. I did sort of an analogy the first time around talking about Ford Mustangs, and so I'm going to build on this because the first time around we talked about the old 1970s Mustang to the new electric Mustang. Well, now what we're talking about now is kind of like an update to the electric Mustang. Ford built on their foundation of this electric Mustang Mach-E, and they came out with this thing called the Mach-E 1400, which is nothing less than a performance modified electric version of it with 7 motors, and it puts out about 1,400 horsepower, and it can smoke all 4 tires off in a few seconds. It's ridiculous.
It's got 7 motors on it.
Yeah.
There's 4 wheels.
Don't ask me how they did it.
Okay. I'm just trying to math, and
Yeah.
that doesn't. Okay.
Yeah, it's it's quite the thing. They have a drift version of it as well if you're a drifter.
I was
So
gonna say
just
maybe it's 4, but RAID 6,
yeah,
but it
maybe
doesn't.
yeah, I
I'm
don't
not
know.
sure.
I'm not sure either, but go just look up this car on the YouTubes when you're bored later, and you'll it sounds like a really big remote control like electric car driving around. It's just screams. It's kind of fun. Um, but that's kind of the analogy I like to do with this. I'm a car guy, so I talk about car analogies. It's a good thing I live up by Indianapolis now because all they have around here is cars. Um, so the so so that's sort of the bit of it is every iteration that VMware releases for NSX has just a bit of new features to things, and we're trying to constantly iterate and change and make things happen. So we're still building on this virtual cloud networking idea of protecting any device, any application, any cloud, and we're still talking about all of the NSX bits on the outside and how they connect and bring all these applications and data centers and public clouds and networks of things and all of this stuff comes together. So this is still very much the VMware vision of building this network in software that allows customers to do things that we feel we do better than a lot of other vendors. And we do this because you know change is everywhere, and the pace of change in IT especially is difficult. Networks do get more complex, especially as we go between private and public clouds. Hardware-based architectures, they as they get refreshed out, they're expensive and difficult to deal with. And I'm on calls with customers all the time who have physical network and security teams and virtualization teams, and these teams still even in today's world, don't necessarily work together on a day-to-day basis. And that's that people problem of it is still probably one of the hardest hurdles to get over for customers because, as things become more integrated with software, it does force you to kind of communicate as a team a little bit more tightly. So, so that's the overall idea of NSX is to try to make these things simpler and bring pieces together. So where we're integrating L2 and L7 networking and security solutions right into the software layer, so we can do it seamlessly across things. Because we're just doing it software that runs everywhere, it's cheaper and easier to deploy. And because we're using automation and we have policies that work across platforms, we're trying to make it easier for those teams to then collaborate and do things together. So that's the architecture explanation in a nutshell of why NSX is a thing and why it continues to be a thing. So what's kind of the new stuff from 2.5 to 3.0? So I'm going to start at this part. We'll spend a little bit of time here. This is a bit of an eye chart, I realize, but bear with me on this stuff. So as with all things for release specific information, check the VMware docs for the actual release notes. I'm not going to have enough time to go into the minute details of in and out of what changed to what is and is not supported within this 1 hour webinar. So if you're looking for very specific information, check the release notes. That's where it's going to be. There's just I really only have time to kind of hit the highlights and kind of what the big deals are. So kind of the really big thing that hit with 3.0 and even more and so in 3.1 is federation. So what is federation? Federation is ultimately the thing that a lot of customers were waiting for NSX-T when it became released as a product. So we had security that we could do with the distributed firewall. We had routing and distributed routing and things. We could do networking within NSX-T and 2.4, 2.5. That was all good and done for one single site. How do we then replicate that information and spread it out across multiple sites? Well, federation is how we do that now. So I will go through more of a deeper dive in a few minutes here as I get further into this. But federation is probably the biggest thing that customers wanted to get to in order to get to T. And now with 3.0 and 3.1 specifically, federation is a fully production supported platform for customers to be able to move to. Intrinsic security. So this is, our what we're trying to make into, kind of our bread and butter message of what NSX is for customers, especially in today's highly hacked up and attacked world of malware and cybersecurity alerts and the FBI calling customers and warning them about things. And so the intrinsic security piece, this is kind of the watch this space message, because there's a lot more, especially later this fall, that we're going to be rolling into this. So keep an eye out on things. But this, as it sits today, we're still really a really well put together security product. NSX-T has always had a high focus on security, but this is it just keeps getting better with each iteration and each release of this. And part of that is down to this ability, pen's not working, to cover bare metal, Windows and even some Linux operating systems for bare metal workloads. I'll talk about that more in a minute as well. The other piece that, on this list that I didn't have highlighted here, but the microsegmentation planning with NSX Intelligence, that's what the I is highlighting there. On NSX-I, it's NSX Intelligence. The NSX Intelligence piece is if you're on the NSX Enterprise Plus license level, you can deploy an appliance that does specific deep packet inspection and security policy recommendations and things like that. It's an engine designed to automate and create security policies for your environment. So we're trying to continue to find ways for customers to do security and as quickly and easily as possible. There's also still on the vRealize side, the vRealize Network Insight. So if you have vRealize Network Insight, which also comes with NSX Enterprise Plus, you can use that as well for doing the microsegmentation security planning still, as in addition to monitoring all of your network, including your physical devices in your network. But for specific virtual workload planning, NSX Intelligence is one of the key things, again, that's going to watch that space. It's going to keep changing and growing.
I was going to ask a question, but you did answer it on whether that was the VR&I piece, or if that was a totally separate.
They are separate, but they do have tiny bits of overlap. But in general, they're very much kind of two sides of the same coin in some respects. But so where the places where VR&I might be weak, NSX Intelligence is strong, and vice versa. So,
got it. Thanks.
On the operational side of things, so this is probably the biggest architectural change with NSX-T 3.0 and vSphere 7 specifically, is we got rid of the NVDS, and I'll talk about that again in a second here as well. So that's the one big thing. And the other big operational thing is this network topology visualization. So that's a really helpful tool, especially if you're, like I used to be a consultant walking into a customer's operation for the first time, and you want to see what their network looks like. You can just log into NSX in the UI, look at the topology, and you get a quick picture of, okay, these are the routers, these are the network subnets, these are the segments, this is where everything is, and it's just right in front of your face. So it's nice and easy and makes it kind of, simpler to consume. And again, those are the highlights on this page. There's just too much to talk about within the amount of time that I have. And so, but this is kind of the important parts of the 3.0 release. So to 3.1.1, the main stuff that came with, so we started out on the routing side, only allowing BGP for dynamic routing. But with 3.1.1 and 3.1.2, which is the latest release, OSPF version 2 is supported. I just crossed it out when I meant to underline it. So OSPF version 2 is supported now for production environments. So if you want to, if you're within your dynamic routing protocols for the rest of your network, if you're not a BGP shop and you are an OSPF shop, this is something you can use now. And so that's, that was one of the bigger announcements that came out with 3.1.1. Again, on this message of migration, V2T migration support built into the product continues to get development and continues to get focus, because we want to make it easier for customers to do specific migration tasks. So, we have, lift and shift migration within the UI. We've got options for in-place upgrade, support for Cloud Foundation, support for vRealize automation. And we just have we're continually trying to make it simpler for customers to get from NSX for vSphere, because NSX for vSphere, especially the last few releases of it, have been amazing products, really, really stable, do their job really, really well. I can't remember the build, but there was like a Windows XP build. Anthony, I don't know if you remember it. There was a Windows XP build that everybody loved, and nobody ever wanted to get rid of Windows XP because they loved this one certain build, and nobody wanted to leave it. It's kind of like Windows Server 2003. Everybody got really comfortable on 2003, and nobody wanted to let go.
Yeah, I think it was after. It was either Service Pack 2 or Service Pack 3. I think Service Pack 2 was a big deal.
So I liken NSX for vSphere to that because it's so stable and works so well, and people just don't want to give it up. But this is what we're building towards, and while we're trying to make NSX-T, especially with 3.1 and 3.2 coming later this fall, that kind of a release that customers will want to move to and will want to stay with, because this is ultimately the future. NSX for vSphere has a defined end of support and end of life. So migration is a big message and focus that we're trying to get customers to be aware of. This is what's happening. This is where we're going. The other piece of this is the NVDS to VDS migration. I'll talk about what that really is in a second. But there's enhancements to get customers from the NVDS to the VDS if that's necessary, and that's only really necessary if you deployed NSX-T in the 2.4, or 2X versions on vSphere, less than 7.0, so 6.5, 6.7. Okay. And then, of course, with the 3.1, we have NSX-T, the advanced load balancer support built in, and there's integrations with that. So that's a whole other topic for another vBrownBag, is what the acquisition of Avi Networks brings for load balancing within NSX. So we're actually shifting from the built-in native NSX-T load balancer to the Avi Networks load balancer. And there's all kinds of change and things and difference and better ways to do things that Avi brings to the table. And I'm trying to talk one of my Avi engineer cohorts into doing an episode with you guys to talk more about that. So last thing on this page, the NSX Manager is now available in the Azure Marketplace. So for NSX Cloud customers who are in Azure, that's I think that's worthy of highlighting as well. Okay, so again, I don't like to harken back too much on the days of the past, but when we started with NSX, many years ago, I'm not going to date myself and say the specific date because I'll probably get it wrong. But we started out with NSX, and it was really just that. It was just NSX for data center. That's really all NSX started out as. It was one product. And we have now moved into where NSX is this entire portfolio and this entire suite of services and products and things that allow customers to, build not just build networks and software, but secure them, make them elastic and scalable, and ultimately, do them with automation. I've seen demos internally of being able to take an entire stack of networking and security services deployed within a single API call within a few seconds, and you'll go from having nothing in your NSX deployment to having routers, segments, subnets, firewalls, IP groups, security policies, security groups, load balancing, all of it deployed with an API call. And that's sort of the secret sauce of NSX-T, and where we're going through, why we're going through this evolution from V to T, and doing them, and why we want customers to migrate, so we can get them into this platform that NSX-T is has been and is becoming more and more and more of. And especially, as we focus in on just the NSX-T 3.x part of this, it again kind of goes, a little bit of repeat, but now when we talk about NSX-T, we're really talking about these four boxes. We're talking about NSX for data center. We're talking about NSX cloud and public clouds. We're talking about NSX intelligence and security on the IDS IPS front. So we don't typically talk a whole lot about what we know, where we fit against competitors. but this is, I like this slide because this is one area where we can kind of separate ourselves a little bit. So we, for a long, long time, the VMware message has always sort of been, deploy NSX and do your, do your switching, do your routing, do your firewall, do some load balancing, and put that all in NSX and make that be your thing. But realistically, when we're talking about NSX today, we're talking about it from this holistic view of doing everything in a software framework. And then what the piece of this that makes this so much more achievable and so much more scalable and so much more, easy to deploy and use is this part of doing it in automation and doing it with APIs. I have customers who, I've seen them use the power of APIs to just do massive changes and massive deployments and massive upgrades for their workloads and do it, within very short windows of time. And this is the reason really that we've gone in this direction, because APIs are the future. APIs are how things get done in IT. This is how you get your weekends back. So if you're new to this kind of stuff, and you want areas to try to figure out what to learn, like Anthony's and I's friend Ariel Sanchez always says, learn how to do APIs. So
Not that I'm lazy and want to automate stuff, but I'm kind of lazy and APIs help me automate stuff.
exactly.
Yeah. I don't want to say I'm lazy, but I like to think I'm smart.
Yeah. It's a learning curve, but it's one of those things of once you get over some of the humps of it. And in all honesty, I'm still getting started on some of that stuff myself. I'm not, because I have to spend so much time just learning how to communicate what's happening with the product. I don't get kind of that, driver's seat time of actually doing some of these things. But if I was back in the chair of being an engineer responsible for customer workloads, that would be where my focus would be, is learning APIs and learning how to do this stuff in a programmatic way. All right. So biggest architectural change from my perspective for NSX-T 3.0 and further on from 2.5 on. So we're talking about, so the framework here is what we used to have was so vSphere 6.5, 6.7, whatever those releases were. So that's your basic vSphere. And then if you had NSX 2.x, in order for that to communicate with vSphere, you had to deploy this construct called the NVDS. The NVDS effectively was a virtual distributed switch that lived inside of vSphere. And it was not at all controllable or interactable, if that's a word, by vSphere or vCenter. So it was wholly owned by NSX. You could see it within vCenter, but you couldn't do anything with it. And so this was a semi-controversial thing because it made upgrades a little more challenging with NSX. It made kind of how to do networking a little more challenging with NSX, the older versions of NSX. So what we've really done is fixed all of this by just making it go away. And if you're on, vSphere 7, and that's the key thing to have. If your hosts are on vSphere 7 and you have the virtual distributed switch 7.0 deployed or upgraded if you've upgraded from 6.5, 6.7 to 7.0, and you've upgraded your virtual distributed switches from those versions to 7.0, then you can much more easily take advantage of NSX-T networking within vSphere, much like how we did things in NSX for vSphere, because it was just all integrated. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, but really this is what we've done is we've just laid on the NSX components on top of the virtual distributed switch 7.0 in vSphere 7. So that way it's one cohesive thing. You don't have to worry about this separate network or NSX virtual distributed switch architecture and environment. You don't have to dedicate specific physical NICs to it. You can just use your physical NICs and your ports the same way you have always assigned them within the VDS, and it just makes life so much simpler. So that is really kind of the core big architectural change from 2.5 to 3.0. So really, it's just making life simpler for deploying things and managing. The overall architecture, so the NSX manager cluster, still the same. We still do the management control plane within the NSX manager appliances themselves. No really thing to consider for changes here. We still do the CSM for containers and all the vCenter plugins and all those things still happen at this level. This controller cluster is still clustered together. If you're doing, if all of these appliances are on the same subnet, you can use a VIP within NSX to balance traffic between them. If you have a design scenario still where each one of these needs to be on, a different subnet XYZ, then you would need a third-party load balancer or Avi or something like that to come out and balance traffic to get into those. So that is still the case as well. But in general, the thing I really just need to highlight over again is the NVDS has gone away if you're on vSphere 7. And if you're waiting to upgrade to NSX-T or migrate to NSX-T, really your first rule of order is, first of all, upgrade NSX for vSphere to the latest release. Get that prep work done. And then it's a matter of getting your vSphere environment upgraded to 7.0, and then you can start doing your NSX-T migration work to get the managers deployed and start doing the migration coordinator, start to pull that stuff over. So, but again, we'll talk about migrating in a couple of weeks. But overall, in large part, the majority of the architectural differences is really not much. So that's why I say, if you want to see kind of more of the nitty gritty details of what the overall architecture is, you can refer back to the previous vBrownBag series and still look at that because it's still valid content aside from these two differences. All right. I'm going to start the security portion of things here. So for as long as I've been around VMware, not including about 2 years that I've been an employee, but even before that, we'd always sort of talked about doing security from a overlay network capacity first. We've always been able to do security on VLANs, but we didn't really ever spend a whole lot of time talking about it. And in recent years, especially for customers of certain size, they haven't been all that interested in talking about turning on an NSX overlay versus they're happy with their VLANs basically. So it's kind of a who moved my cheese. We just trying to introduce change, but we don't want to do so much change that people freak out about it. So this is where I like to kind of highlight more of a security focus just to get things safe. So, Anthony, you're a partner, you're a consultant. You go into a customer. What is the first thing when you walk in the door with a customer? What are some of the first things you're thinking about when they're asking you to do a project?
That's actually a really difficult question for me to answer. It really depends on what it is. But a lot of times, if I'm walking into a data center, I always look at, I don't know, equipment they have, room, how cleanliness, how clean, how clean it is. What
you didn't? I didn't prep you on this, but so that's good. But that's okay. It's okay. So this is what I did when I was a consultant. So whenever I walked in, because as a consultant, usually you're being brought in for one of two reasons. They want to do something they don't have the expertise to do, or you're being brought in because the house is on fire and you need to put it out.
Yep.
And so more often than not, for me, it was the latter. And in those scenarios, my rule of thumb when I was walking in the door to a customer and they had problems and their world was burning down, as any good firefighter would, what is the first thing you do? You make things safe. And so that's my kind of take. Even today, as I talk to customers about security solutions and things for networks and for that kind of aspect of things, is what's the quickest thing we can do to make your workload safe, to make your data safe. That to me is the thing that if you're concerned at all about security, You need to do that. You need to do it as simply as possible and quickly as possible. And that's where this piece of and what NSX does, I think, delivers for customers, because it takes this idea of, oh, we have to suddenly erase and change and get rid of all our VLANs and move them into overlay networks, and we've got to re-architect the whole thing. It takes all of that fear and change away, because now we can just say, you know what, you don't have to do all that stuff. We're just going to turn on this thing called the distributed firewall right outside every single workload, and they're going to sit on the exact same VLANs that they're on today. They're going to go right through the same exact physical routers that you have deployed today. Nothing has to change within your network, except we're going to turn on some NSX services, and that's it. And so it kind of gets customers into this, micro-segmented security mindset of thinking of, well, yeah, we can do this. It makes it an achievable thing. And so that's why I'll when I first get in front of a customer and start talking about security, this is kind of my go-to thing now is, let's make the world safe before we start doing anything else.
That's a much better answer than mine. But yeah, if I was going into a customer that was on fire, yes, absolutely.
Sorry,
there
yeah.
have been no, I get it. There have been times where you get the phone call about there's some sort of either security issue or some sort
Right.
of virus or malware or crypto situation where you've got your go bag and you're suddenly on site and now we have to find the problem and attack it. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And whether it's, has the internet already been unplugged or all of the
and that's and that
stuff.
Yeah, and it's and there are some customers who, for them to do some of these kinds of changes, things have to start on fire, which is unfortunate. Because if we do some of these things that I'm walking through here, it's quick, easy changes that really don't even require downtime to get these things turned on. And that to me is sort of the real key piece of this is we can turn on security. We can do security in a way that doesn't require a whole lot of changes, and we can make things safer than they are potentially today by turning on NSX in their environment. And we can, and even if they're on, older environments that they're not upgraded to vSphere, yeah, we can still deploy the NVDS and still migrate workloads to them, on other hypervisors. So if they're using KVM and they're not using even vSphere, then yes, we still do use the NVDS within those other hypervisors. But if you're on, vSphere 7, then we can just plug into the VDS 7, turn on the distributed switch service within NSX, and away we go. Oops. Pause for a second there. So how do we kind of get to this thing? I'm going too long on this, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead a little bit here. So this is built into NSX 3.x now, where we do this VLAN microsegmentation workflow. So it's really just kind of, a step at a time to walk through this. So, step one, we prepare the clusters for NSX. So it's a pretty straightforward process to just turn the stuff on in NSX. Let me get logged in here. And this is a live nested lab, so who knows what's going to happen here. Oh, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to mistype the password. That's what I'm going to do.
Passwords are important. I didn't sacrifice to the demo gods, so you're kind of on your own.
Okay. So the vSphere is still there. All right. So when we basically to get to this idea of turning on security as fast as possible and as simple as possible in this workflow, we deploy the NSX, manager and controller appliance, which is one single appliance. And then for a production deployment, you're going to do 3 of those. But even if you're just doing it in a POC, you can deploy one and do some of this and turn on some of these services. Within the NSX UI itself, we're just going to go to system, we're going to go to fabric, or we're going to plug in a compute node. So compute managers, this is your vCenter effectively. Or you can, add standalone hosts in here as well for KVM nodes and things like that. As I talked about in the first series, anything that is controlled by NSX is a host transport node. So that's the terminology thing that we talk about within NSX itself. So once we have the hosts, understood by NSX, we simply just configure them for NSX. We push the NSX VIBs into the host themselves and turn on those services. Once those services are consumable by the hosts, that they are known, then we can start to do networking services. And really, it's just a matter of coming over to the networking side, coming into our segments. So these things we used to call logical switches, we now call segments. And I deployed this earlier where I just added a segment, called it test, put it on a VLAN, and when I come into vSphere and I look at my vSphere networks, I see this test NSX, and the N over the little icon indicates that it's an NSX backed segment. And then it's really just a matter of migrating your workloads from another network into this now NSX backed basically port group. And so now as soon as that's done, that's step 2 and 3 in the process. Then you're just writing your security policy and turning on the security for your services. And all of a sudden, we have an additional layer of protection that's not an agent inside the workload. And it immediately starts protecting things. And now we can also do, distributed intrusion detections, and as we'll talk about in a minute on this stuff as well. So it's a really kind of a quick win way to get security enabled for networks. And again, this is something really that I've seen a lot of customers respond to because, everything happens so fast nowadays. They want stuff now, and this is a simple way to do it without having to go through and re-architect everything.
And that's a really big deal too, not being able to re-architect everything, but also something that you can safely do and change. You don't have to plan a maintenance window for re-architecture. I mean,
Right.
You're hitting a few buttons and your risk of actually interrupting workload is 0 to none. And that's a huge key for some of my customers, especially well, you work a lot with healthcare. I have some customers that do manufacturing. I mean, even patches get very difficult to do because the downtime and re-architecture maintenance is so limited. But this has really come so far from the way that things used to be.
Right.
It's amazing.
Well, and it's kind of along this line too of when you think about it, it's just software. So when you do this change to migrate the workload from one virtual distributed port group to this one, you're not even really on. It's not like the days of pulling the Cat5 jack out of the port and plugging it in. You're not even doing that. You're just telling the bit of software to go from one piece of software to another. And so it happens at line, at CPU processing speed. So I've seen customers do this change where they don't even lose a ping, depending upon the workload on the CPU at the moment.
Yeah. And ARP tables be fast if that has to change for topology reasons.
Right.
But that's awesome.
So the other kind of piece of this is I'm trying to quickly roll through the security piece here, is bare metal server support. So I'm going to kind of hit the highlights of this. So bare metal, this is the other kind of thing that customers have always kind of harped on with, we get, and they'll concede that we can do, VMware virtual machine workload security, and we're the best at that. Most everybody will say when it comes to virtualization, networking security, on virtual machine workloads, NSX is the best place to do that. Not a lot of people are going to fight us on that. And especially, as we continue to grow out in containers and public clouds, those are, continuing to get better and continuing to grow and learn. But the one thing that always kind of rears its head is I've got this bare metal workload that is on this legacy application that it's this, sacred thing, that application that won't die, and we have to have it, and we can't move it, and we can't do anything with it. It has to stay there. So for those kinds of applications, how do we do security for those things? So we have, kind of a couple of ways to get around this. And the key, piece of this is we install what's effectively a software layer or agent inside the operating system of that bare metal workload. So it allows us to do a couple of things. So we can effectively route all of the networking components inside of the bare metal workload through this software agent so that we can take advantage of NSX VLANs or overlay networks within NSX itself. So what happens is when that agent is deployed on that bare metal workload, it actually shows up as something that you can add to the NSX fabric. So you would be adding this effectively as a node within NSX. So because you're adding it as an NSX object, and because it's part of the NSX fabric, once you turn that service on inside the bare metal workload, it allows you to then do all of the things that NSX does, in software for that bare metal workload. So, there's caveats in there. The bare metal workload has to support the ability to, allow us to install the agent within inside of it. We only get, layer 4 firewall within it. So we kind of have to do a bit of a, qualification for the workload to make sure that it's fully supported and all those kinds of things. In my world in healthcare, there are some vendor supported applications where they don't allow you to do any changes to the application or the platform that it sits upon. So this may not be an option for things like that. But for some of these kind of one-off scenarios if it's a thing that can never die off of that physical workload, this is an option, and it is something that we continue to kind of talk about because again, it still gives customers the option to do with a VLAN or with overlays based on the physical device that you're trying to connect with. So it's something, again, we don't talk about all that much, but it is something that has come to fruition with the upgrades from 3.x or from 2.5 to 3.x. I think I covered most of that. All right. I want to get to this before we run out of time here. So Federation. Federation is this set of capabilities that we're introducing with NSX 3.0 and went full production availability in 3.1. That provides centralized management, policy consistency, allowing customers to deploy and enforce networking and security policies across large scale NSX deployments. So this is kind of that, as I kind of referred to in the beginning, this is this thing that, when NSX-T kind of was coming out for customers, this is the thing that most people wanted to see before they were going to go full production with it. And it's here now, and it is available to do this. We do this in this type of a fashion. So when you deploy NSX today, you're going to deploy it first in this local manager topology. So this is, everything in this local manager topology would be what I talked about in the first vBrownBag series. I'm going to keep hammering back to that because there was a ton of information. I spent a lot of time on it. So please, vBrownBag, don't delete it yet. So when in this topology, we're going to deploy local managers for your different sites. And then what Federation allows us to do is we deploy the global manager cluster of NSX managers into either one of these two sites or in a separate site, depending upon how your things are deployed. That's going to dictate where these things go. And with this global manager cluster of NSX managers, we can onboard these local managers to the global manager, and then what this then allows us to do is with a centralized UI and a centralized API, we can deploy stateful services, firewalls, groups, networks. Not at this point, not most of the services, maybe not all of them yet. I'll get into that in a second. Things that you want to do, not only on just one site, but you want to push universal objects, something that works on all sites. You would instantiate them from the global manager view, and it would get pushed down to all of your sites. So this is effectively allowing customers this elasticity and scalability where they can connect these things across multiple sites and then realistically bring, a consistent security policy across all their sites so that they have the ability to secure their workloads from one end to the other and bring disaster recovery and security all together under one roof. I'm talking really fast, but I'm going as quickly as I can to get through this before I get too much out of time here. So again, high level design on this. When we have a standby global manager cluster, we have local managers in each location, and then we have our active global manager cluster. And so when things are connecting up, so we register the local managers to the global manager. What happens sort of in a failure scenario here? We'll kind of quickly step through some of the high level look at what this looks like. So when we have an active manager and a standby manager, we can have objects and applications even stretched across sites. So this particular application is stretched across both sites. What happens if we lose part of this area? So what then, in order to get the management recovery back, it's really just a couple of clicks. You sign into the standby manager and you turn it on from standby to active, and it takes over and allows you then the functionality to recover management of your environment from the standby manager. And it effectively allows you to then do the DR failover, so you can turn on networking services and get those components up and running and have things kind of come back to a functional state without when you've lost that other one. So inside the UI itself, when you're looking at the global manager view from the NSX global manager UI, it's really just you log in, and when it detects the other one is not active, you can just make this one active. It will take over. Now the kind of the question that usually is begged when this happens is, okay, we lost this one, but now say it was just a glitch or something minimal, and now it comes back, and so your standby one is now active. What's this guy going to do when he comes back on and says, hey, I should be the active one? Are we going to have kind of a split brain scenario here? Well, because these two are linked up together, it's automatically going to look at and see, okay, this global manager is now active, and it's going to kind of swap and just so this one then becomes the standby. So it's just a built-in safety check. So when it comes back online, it's going to call its friend and phone a friend and say, hey, friend, how you doing? And this one will say, I'm the boss now. And the other one will go back into standby. And then at such point, when you're ready to flip it back to have this one be active again, you can roll through a maintenance window and turn it back on and start to sync those services back over. Oh, I should also note, on the VMware Public NSX Communities section, there are demos available that you can go out and download. This mid-November is referring to November of last year. So there are full video demos out in the Public Communities forum that Dimitri has put out there for these. So definitely check those out if you want to see them. So a lot of this is the same kind of general workflow. So if we're doing this even from a networking perspective, the networking components get lost. You effectively sign into the global manager, and you can run through the network recovery options and turn on services that you may have lost when you lose a site. And it's really just a matter of coming in and getting these things turned back on as quickly as possible. And in some cases, they're depending upon the way you've deployed the application, the way you've deployed the networking, those services will turn on automatically. But again, the devil's in the details of the design. And again, there is a communities demo out there available you can download and take a look at to see through what this full recovery looks like. So even in these networking scenarios, we have the stateful services that are deployed on the tier 1 SR for when you lose those kinds of services, based on BGP and what the costs are. We're going to detect when you lose a site, and allow things to come back up as services do in an automated fashion, or you can manually kick them over from the federated view. So again, if you lose things, we'll within the global management view, we'll be able to kick those back over, and turn them back up within the standby recovery environment from federation. and in certain cases, network recovery might not even be required because these things are stretched out across, and they'll just, when one goes down, the other one just picks up automatically. So that is, I'm just going to skip through some of this stuff because there's just too much to go through here. So these are sort of the crux of services that are available today with Federation. There are some things that are on the roadmap to get into late releases later down the road. I have customers asking for all of these things. So as the product continues to be developed and continues to happen and get more things get turned on, more of these services will be deliverable from the global manager down into the local management plane. But as of today, this is where things sit within the topology of Federation. All right, I got a couple minutes left here. So IDPS. And this is kind of where I'm going to try to wrap things up. So the intrusion detection and prevention system. So this is a piece that we started developing even prior to the acquisition of LastLine. But LastLine is again kind of adding fuel to the fire of making this a much more cohesive security story. So what we're talking about with IDPS, we have all these services that NSX delivers. We can get a lot of these components and things turned on. We've always been able to do really well the distributed firewall. So now kind of the next iteration of that and helping add on to the layers of security services that NSX delivers for customers is the ability to not only just turn on firewalling and security policies within the firewall itself, but now it's about the ability to do inspection in real time and understanding who's doing what, where, why, and where the bad potential actors are within your network traffic itself. So it's continuous. So it's based on information from Suricata, from other sources. We're going to do some real time analysis of what the traffic is happening in your network and basically flag bad traffic that we see as things that shouldn't be there, so we can help understand and give you better false positives in your environment and understanding where things are from a security standpoint. And it's about helping customers achieve regulatory compliance for things quicker, and understanding how to get it really gets how to get there faster. So much like I talked about with turning on VLAN back security, this is very much within the realm of that. So again, if you wanted to enable intrusion detection prevention systems in addition to the security pieces, even over VLANs, the built-in IDS IPS engine that's part of the NSX framework is again a simply turn it on service, and something that will again get you from less security to more security faster. And then the other piece of this is doing this virtual DMZ thing where really you can create a network in software and it's just a DMZ because it is, and it enables we don't have to have these physically cordoned off networks and things anymore, where we're separating out the different services and things that are running. Let's see here. All right. So how we do this stuff within the software layer is if you're not familiar with how the distributed firewall works, this is how the IDS IPS system works and how the distributed firewall works. So traditional networks, this is what it looks like. So we have a physical box that's an IDS IPS analytics engine that's just traffic is being hairpinned in and through and going from the host into this box and back, and it's extremely inefficient, and it just allows a lot of repeat traffic to get circled through your network. So what we do from NSX is we take those things, distribute them throughout the hypervisor, put them directly next to the workload, and get them really just intrinsically put throughout your entire application network itself. And it takes away the blind spots. It prevents lateral movement and really just provides visibility into your network that you really can't get from a lot of other places at this level of efficiency. And that's the part of this, because now all your network security is happening within the host itself and not having to go and do this circle thing, which may not seem like a lot, But when you're doing it at a massive scale on a large enterprise level of networks, it really can cause performance issues and slow things down. And again, the other piece of this is we don't require physical re-architecting of the network when you're doing this kind of stuff, because it's really just turning those services on and making the world safe. So if the distributed firewall is putting out fires and making things safe, the IDS IPS engine is your fire alarms. So, all right. So again, this is kind of a little bit of a teaser to what I'm going to talk about next time with the NSX Advanced Threat Protection suite of things. So, the overall definition here is NSX Advanced Threat Protection detects and prevents sophisticated threats from entering or operating in your network, and does this, in these, consistency of 3 components. So, it's the intrusion detection and prevention system, which is, widely distributed throughout NSX at the host level. And, we use signatures, tailored to the applications that you're going to protect. And then, we have the NSX Advanced Threat Analyzer that uses, a combination of static and dynamic program analysis techniques to identify known as well as unknown malware programs and malicious documents traveling within your network. And the last piece is, the NSX network detection and response, which leverages, network traffic and analytics to identify that unwanted network behaviors. A lot of this is driven by NSX intelligence to get customers, the information so that we can detect things before they really become major breaches, and allowing them and preventing them from moving laterally across your environment. This is sort of the weak area that we've seen, and this is why we're seeing so broadly in the world today all of these breaches that are happening, because it's not so much a matter of when or if you're going to be hacked. It's when you're going to be hacked. And a lot of these customers that are where we see these news headlines of meat producers and gas pipelines and all these things that are being attacked. Most of them were breached months and months and maybe even years ago. And because something hasn't been patched or something hasn't been updated, they had a vulnerability that's been sitting there and it just hasn't been executed upon yet. And so that's why we're seeing more and more and more of these, is because there's just stuff that's just laying in wait. And really, realistically, we need these intrinsic security tools in customers' networks to be able to find these things before they get turned on and activated.
Well, and I think one of the key words, and I know we're short for time.
Yeah, I'm getting there as fast as I can.
No, it's okay. But I just wanted to say, I think one of the key words that you mentioned before was the detection, but then also the response is a big key. Like,
right.
Okay, great, you can detect it, right? Somebody's at the door, or they've already gone through the door, but now the response piece is the important part, in my opinion, or just as important, of course.
Yep. And that to me is like, this is, probably the last one of the last things I'll walk through here is this is our general framework of what I walk customers through on a day in and day out basis is, to get security and get it as fast as possible. It's these 3 things. It's segmentation, so doing the distributed firewalling, and then understanding who your applications are talking to, and that's network insight or NSX intelligence. And you can build those segmentation and security policies with our tools, and have, you can at least protect what you have today. And then the second piece, it's turning on that IDS IPS engine so we can understand the flows in the network, look for known bad information, and start to block that stuff and see where it's popping up. And then, based on, the information that we get in the IDS IPS, that feeds out our network, traffic analysis, so that we can understand, where the bad actors are, and immediately provide remediation to those things. And realistically, it's just about identifying this bad guy so we can keep him from proliferating across your environment. So in a complete nutshell, I mean that's sort of the groundwork level of where we sit today, from NSX 2.5 to 3.1.2, the current release today. We've gone from this being a singular data center environment where you're just doing networking and security and distributed firewalling and routing and all of the kind of core networky things that we've always done. And it's really branching out into this holistic, solution that does, security and bare metal and public clouds and containers and all of these things. And now with the advanced threat protection suite that we'll talk again more about next week, and I'll even try to get through a bit of a demo for that, or 2 weeks from now. This is sort of the meat of where we are going, and we're really, as our former CEO Pat Gelsinger said, we're out to become a major player in security for network security in the world, and that is the VMware NSPU mission at this point is to try to get as many customers into a secure framework, because realistically we just want people to be safe. We want our data to be safe, and we want our hospitals to be safe and be able to provide care to customers. We want our infrastructure to be safe, and that's when I say we, I mean that in the global sense of because VMware is a global company. We're not just talking about the United States here. We're talking about everybody that VMware serves. And so this is not just something that we're dealing with, here in the U.S. It's something we're dealing with globally, and this is why NSX, is a thing, and why it will continue to be an important piece of customers' enterprise data networks. So with that, that's where I'm going to sit and end for today. I have some references again. You can refer back to these links for more information, or the information I had at the very beginning. Anthony, I don't know if there's really any questions that have popped up, but in general, that's what I had for today.
There have not been, and I think that just means you did a really good job of explaining it the first time around.
I hope so.
Again, as Britton mentioned, check out if there's more information you want to know on some of the more foundation stuff, check out the series he did last year that is still on our vBrownBag channel. I don't think we've deleted videos or ever do, so they will be there for probably as long as the internet exists, hopefully.
As long as YouTube will let you keep them, yeah.
Yeah, whether that's good or bad. Again, he's going to be finishing this series. We're going to take a break next week. So, or not taking a break, but taking a break from NSX next week. Next week we have Pydantic, Modern Python Data Validation and Settings Management. So if anybody does any coding, data validation is incredibly important. And so we're going to be going over that tomorrow with Mike Kennedy. Same time, same bat time, same bat channel. Following that, I see we're going to do NSX ATP, last line, advanced threat, more IDPS and security. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sweet. I know it's a huge topic. There's a lot to talk about on it, and I know an hour doesn't do everything justice. So thank you for doing as well as you did, squeezing everything in the time we've got.
Yeah.
Without further ado, yeah, thank you for attending, and we hope to see you next week.